in my messy studio right now having the afternoon cafe, little Greek coffee, and it's delicious and I'm relaxed. And I just had such a wonderful, busy day today getting my course ready for the next session coming up this Saturday. So, what do I want to talk about in this podcast? I am really just wanting to talk about your space, okay? Your studio, your space. Let's say you're like me, you haven't got this big, beautiful studio where you have couches and rugs and everything all. I don't have that. I have this little tiny space, and sometimes I feel like, it's I am envious. Do I even want to say that, of these big beautiful studios with the wood floors and out in, the middle of nowhere, and they're absolutely gorgeous. And you guys are so lucky if you have one of those studios. You're really, really very lucky. But what if you don't? And what if you don't even have a studio? What do you do? How do you create the space to be able to paint with any kind of sanity? If you take a look behind me, you can see there's stuff all over because I really don't have a lot of room. It's just this, from wall to wall. If I stretch out my arms, I'm touching both walls. So, it's a small space. However, it's also been a blessing to be in this small space. And why would that be? Well, okay, listen. If you haven't got the space to, put everything out and have everything organized, things can kind of pile up, right? Like if I need to gesso some panels, which is what I'm doing today, I kind of put everything there, and, my headphones are here, and I've got my notebook here. Everything is just kind of all piled on top of each other. And, it can be really, really frustrating. But the trick is to see things differently. Like, alter your perception of how you choose to see it. When I get on one of those mental rampages of, oh my God, you just don't have this big, beautiful studio. You don't even have a decent studio. You've got this tiny little space. You know what happens? One thought triggers the other, and I can just feel this closing in, this getting tight, this just spiraling down into this murky, mucky gook, and I don't want to be there, right? So what do you do when your mind starts going down that path? You have to catch it first. Catch it. Take in a breath. Take in another breath. And I mean, be conscious of the breath that you're taking in. And relax. Just kind of release that negative spiral going down, and think about it differently. What are the positive sides of having a small studio? Well, number one, I can't clutter it up. I can't just keep adding things. I get to be a minimalist as much as I can and just get rid of the things that I don't need in here. And that's a very, very healthy habit, especially for your creativity, because when you can release the extra stuff that's just kind of hanging around, you'll find that your studio has more space for creativity to come in and play, but also within you, when you release all that extra stuff that we don't need, your creativity can work through you in much more freedom and with much more space, and just, this coming and coming and coming awareness, understanding, communication between you, the artist, and your painting. And I love that. So that is a healthy practice. And from this little studio, when I can keep it uncluttered and I don't have all this stuff in there, then I can move out into the rest of my house and kind of see the rest of my house in the same way. Like, oh, do I really need that? That's kind of cluttering the table up. Let's clear it out. Let's make space. Make it beautiful, refreshing, and lovely. Just you walk into the room and you're like, oh, this is nice. Okay, so decluttering not only in your studio, but everywhere else as well. Another advantage of having this small studio is that I get to remind myself again and again and again that it's not the size of your studio that creates the art, that makes me a painter or an artist. It's the size of my imagination. It's the size of the space within me that I keep pushing to open so that I have a clear channel for my creativity to play through. You don't need to have a large physical space, but you do need to have inner space in order to be able to create fully and freely, to like dive into that creative flow and just let it move through you. If you've got stuff all over, your creativity is going to get blocked. It's going to stumble on, stuff. You don't need it. So that is probably the best part of having this small studio. It is what I do in this studio, how I choose to expand outwards as I'm in this tiny space, that is the most important thing. So I just wanted to pass that on to you guys. If anybody out there just doesn't have like this big, beautiful space to paint in, you don't need it. And believe me, I was the type. I wasted years and years telling myself that, well, I can't do this yet because I don't have this studio space or I don't have a place to paint. If you're out painting on your kitchen table at, 11 o'clock at night because the rest of your day is packed, busy, full, for that time, that little corner of your table is your studio. And you don't need anything else. The only thing you need is that inner desire to create, that inner play with the creative flow, with your creativity on a canvas, through your pencil in a drawing, whatever it is that you're doing, that's what matters. So remember this, folks. Remember this. You out there who doesn't have the big, beautiful studio, okay? You don't need it. And the final thing is, when I'm comfortable in a large space, I can get really, 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 really comfortable. And you know what that means? I don't go outside to paint. I'm really comfortable in my studio, in my space, right? When I'm in here sometimes and I'm feeling like the walls are just coming in on me, I got to get outside. And plein air painting, which we'll do in another podcast, is one of the most, it's one of the most beautiful things to do and one of the most terrifying at the same time. So we'll talk about that in another podcast. But getting outside where you have the world as your studio, what could be better than that? Really? So, a positive thing about this tiny space, or if you're painting on the kitchen table, is that you don't have a studio. So, pack up your stuff and get outside, even if it's in your backyard, on your balcony. Doesn't matter where it is, just get outside and paint. Uh, there is more to setting up outside to paint a study. I mean, you don't have to do like big full paintings outside. Just go out and do little practice studies, right? There is something about that that will expand you and will develop your abilities as an artist more than anything else out there. Much more than a lush, beautiful studio. Much more than this tiny little space in here. Much more than your kitchen table. So get out, do some painting, get the idea of the studio, like you need to have an atelier, this beautiful art studio or whatever. You don't need it. Your studio is in here. Let it flow. Let it be. And always, always, always enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy it. Even when I'm in this cluttered little space and it's kind of bugging me right now, I have to stop and take a breath. Take a second breath. Maybe even a third breath. And begin to smile and say, hey, look what I have. Look, I am lucky enough to have this space. So that's all I really wanted to say today. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. Get out there painting, be inspired, be creative, and be you.